jumped into some interesting territory. As some of you know from following last night, I started a book for the channel again. Went with something significantly lighter, talking about 200 pages. So, 200 pages and, you know, designed as an easy read. I don't even think I don't even think each page is as wordy as the last, like, because like when I read the Jewish War, that was like I think 400 pages per se, something like that, and so there's just I think I saw, because if the chapters are written like the prologues, then it's gonna be easy. It's gonna be easy to read it. Shouldn't take long. It's kind of more. It's kind of more of an in between, because I haven't finished reading Dune yet, right? So I'm putting my primary focus there. Um, Even more so than Jewish War, though, something like Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals has a certain notoriety that, you know, I've continually heard about it. I wasn't in a place to look into it until till now. And of course, I'm reading this prologue, and I'm just wondering to myself, okay, all right, he's laying out who's it for, and um, why what you're doing is not working, and he is talking about why people that are, doing all sorts of forms of protesting and things like that have failed, right? And so I understand that there's supposed to be some, that this is supposed to get into some of the, the very, I'm told that this is where a lot of the crazy behavior that throws a person off guard is, right? Like, well, we'll see. I'm gonna look at this and say to myself, okay, how is this productive? Do I agree with his context of who the target of this behavior is, so on and so forth. We're gonna see how things go, right? I spent the first thing with that. As you can see, I've picked some punk and hardcore music to go with this one. Unlike as per my normal tastes, I was gonna do stuff that I like within the genre, right? So, the punk and hardcore music, little of it is going to favor concepts of the Republic and the concepts of, I don't know, the pursuit. It's kind of like that pursuit of greatness kind of thing. It's just like, it's more about the pursuit of being a good person, the pursuit of being a man of good character. Granted, at the very least, being a man of good character can be in stuff that's more on the conservative spectrum of this kind of music, right? And this kind of music is for a certain kind of voice, right? Uh, Punk and hardcore is about being really, is typically a really fun to play situation because of the emphasis on performance, and brutality in the performance, or high energy within the performance. Hey, what's up, DN? But I mean, naturally, of course, though, just the reality that that you're going to have great music like this when it has a worthy enemy, and when capitalism makes promises to make life a certain way and it fails you in those promises, it makes perfect sense that you would have anti-capitalist music, because if the other side is only throwing that answer at you and it's not helping with other things, right? And the only reason why people like me have reservations about the welfare state, which is ultimately what all of this is about, is the welfare state. I mean, it can be about environmentalism and things like that. He brings up environmentalism. But the needs of those on welfare are often not environmentally sound needs, right? Because of the manufacturing and production involved with processed foods, for instance, right? So byproducts of processed foods, and those processed foods are the cheap foods that get some sort of something. I don't even know if it's nutritional, right? Just because we've been living in a nutritional deficit, and nutritional stuff that's cheap, but you got to spend the money, right? It's just like, do you get the shitty quality eggs or the higher quality eggs? Do you get the grass-fed bacon, or do you get the bacon of questionable diet with sugar in it, right? Do you get the sugar-free bacon or not, right? I try to get sugar-free grass-fed bacon as much as I can. Those are like my two parameters: sugar-free, grass-fed. I mean, obviously also organic, but sometimes at this point I just wonder about organic, not just the suspicion of the validity of the label, but just whether the science is sound enough, right? Like, I honestly have a doubt that these mad scientists that are putting that are trying to, I don't know, they're vaccinating the fucking animals that we're eating, and they believe that there's going to be a magical transference of that immunity to like, I don't think it works that way at all. The idea that any of that stuff can transfer after it's being processed in your stomach acids, after it's been acclimated for the bovine that it was injected into, it just, none of that makes sense. I think that that was just a grift because they were losing money, and they said, like, listen, man, we got to sell these vaccines. People don't want to take them, and so somebody said, here, sell them to us, and we'll do it with the cattle, for whatever reason that they had to do that, whatever fucking conspiracy, and they think that this is going to work, and it's not. It's just going to be probably just another shitty grade of fucking beef or something. Or maybe it'll be the high grade beef. I don't know. And I'm not sure how you'd avoid it. And this is why I was yelling about the enemy in the gate. Let's breach the gate, right? We're living in a time of of you realizing what a tremendous fool you were, because you've been living off of the assumptions of who you thought you voted for, right? I gave up on those delusions in 2020, right? I didn't feel good about voting at all in 2020, right? Like, I should have just declined to vote, because when I was walking through there, they told me I got to put a mask on, even though I'm socially distanced at that poll and all that, and we're well past the height of social distancing. right? Like it was beginning to lean off from all of the distress of what everybody was dealing with, but it was still something that had the energy to be fought and all that stuff. There was still a lot of fucking elderlies kicking around on the program within the infrastructure system to enforce the delusion, right? So, you know, I went and I did my thing. The fraud was allowed to steal it. There was the president's campaign allowed them to steal it. If you look at how obviously intentionally botched the Giuliani fucking investigation into the election fraud was, and now we're, I can take a poll just by reading all sorts of different people in different places and rationalizing that with how I've seen everything else, and say to myself, well, ultimately I kind of think that the nation would have been all on board with most of what I heard everybody paying attention to, because it sounded like our side was paying deeply close attention to the details, to the particulars of the issues, to the details, so on and so forth, right? You know, this is your frustration. And I'm not reading this book because I'm looking for radical solutions. I have no fucking interest. Like, you read that prologue and it's just like, okay, maybe me even 5 years ago could have been enticed with a prologue like that. Right? That's a very enticing header to explain that this is your book. And that's largely because the book is trying to capture you before you mature, right? Because Saul's talking about how, like, oh man, look at these people who grew up and checked out or whatever, and went and turned into something else or whatnot, right? They turned into the next generation to contribute to the resistance problem, right? And I feel a little bit like that, right? Your worldview changes when you don't have to compromise yourself anymore, and yet you still have what it takes to do what you got to do, right? I'm just satisfied reaching baseline, because I'm not at baseline yet. The way my income to my expenses works out, I am not in an independent place. I have all sorts of things going for me that give me what I have now, and I'm okay with that, because I really sincerely feel like it's more about growing into it, right? I think because regardless of this currency being the fiction that it is, it's a fiction that is forced to work within reality and thus has to still abide by those rules, even if it can cheat to extend its, because all it's doing, it's not cheating at the game, but every time it loses the game, it buys an extension to go. It's the dollar is in extra innings is the best way I can explain it, and they had to bribe the coach or the ref to call foul ball to go into extra innings. Like that's kind of like what it is with all of this money printing situation, is that you're in extra innings in baseball. All right? fraudulent extra innings, but nobody wants to argue with the referee. And the referee is taking orders from the owner of the league. So my point is that this is why, this is why grooming is done, right? It's just like everybody is soul collecting in this respect, and it's like you need to lead the mind into your pen of ideas. You need to lock yourself in with these socialist values or these capitalist values, right? I try not to be locked in with anybody's particular capitalist values. I try to have a full breadth of understanding of capitalism in my reality, right? And there's plenty of things about how they do capitalism that don't make sense to me, because I know that it's designed not to make sense because of everything that goes on in how they just play with money in the markets, right? People that get rich from playing money in the markets, these investors and such, right? And then you make that all that wealth, and that changes the game, right? A parking ticket means less to you, right? I mean, you make enough money, a speeding ticket means less to you because you may always have the money to afford a driver or something, right? Granted, some of these imaginations of how people blow their money when they're not the ultra wealthy is kind of a funny idea to me, right? It's the difference between, does Donald Trump drive his own car, or does Donald Trump get driven around when he's a private person, right? Which I suppose once you've stepped into the presidential universe, you don't drive yourself anymore, right? There's a surrendering to the machine involved in that respect, right? That's part and parcel of the fear, intimidation tactics, right? To let all the conspiracy, it's trying to scare the conspiracy theorists. It's not going to scare people that are paying attention. They're just going to play with the they're going to play with the lone gunman game, as they always do, which will always be just askew of a good argument for either side's issues about gun stuff. And you could tell a left-wing anti-capitalist about a conspiracy involving a major mega corporation, and a properly informed explanation, and they won't run with it. They won't be able. They're not going to be capable of articulating it under their rhetoric and vernacular, right? Being presented from somebody, doing things like how I do. So, this is why I never see socialists complaining about BlackRock, right? I don't see them complaining about the Bill Gates factory farms. But, that's because they were always for factory farms. Right? And it's just like, well, no, we like those corporations because they have socialist ideals. And so they only like that corporation because they want to make, because that corporation will be interested in being socialist along with them, right? Because that corporation will just become the government because that's how the lefty kids will trust it. And all of that gets further and further away from kind of the punk revolutionary ideals, I suppose, right? Which I sometimes just wonder what all that means outright, because it's one thing to look at what the punk musician that made that music does for themselves, right? But like, what's the orbit of everyone else who's got to be like whatever, right? It's just like, do you it gets into the personal questions, right? It gets into the personal questions about your finances, and if you care for your privacy, right? You're going to be arguing with people that in their personal lives and other people that they know that there's something in the system that we have now that is beneficial, that is not as much a complaint to them as it is to the other guy, right? And so if they don't disclose their finances while talking about the issue of finances, it separates trust. You end up lacking the qualified trust for the argument, right? This is why I'm kind of critical of the position that you get from. I wonder if I can park it, because people are parking less and less in that other lot, and I'd rather fucking park closer. So I'm gonna park over here. That's what I'm gonna do. No, not near anything. I suppose I can park over here in the far lot. That'll still be a quicker drive out. Okay. Ooh. Too much. All right. So to kind of nail my point here, right? It's you end up having an argument of insufficiency, right? Because the only reason why capitalism isn't dead is that it's either working for some or partially working for most, and then this informs the body politic that it's at the very least not something that we have to shut down in an emergency. So therefore it can stand while we argue about it, right? And the other side has been told that capitalism is directly the cause of all sorts of problems, and it's not. It's human beings, human beings, personal conduct towards each other, and how that informs other human beings. Because a good man will withhold help to a bad man as much as a bad man is going to withhold help from a good man. and other combinations therein, because there's a bad man factor in the equation, and the other side, having a moral compass, would want to look at what they have control over, whether that be as the socialist collective or communist collective, or the personal wealth in capitalism, perhaps the shared wealth of the shareholders. Sharing is caring, after all. You see, I partially wonder, is the joke that the way Wall Street set up right now is actually communist, right? Because, I mean, the idea is that we're kind of dealing with front companies, right? That we're covertly communist, and all these companies are not real. That's kind of the deal. Ugh. Kind of the subtext. I gotta cut that with a wire. All right. That's kind of in the mix. So anyway, that's something to meditate on. I'm gonna focus on putting my new boots on. I'll catch you later.